I'm so
Hi,
ready.
Colors.
Colors.
For days.
Colors.
You look great.
Yay, you too.
I'm so happy to see you guys.
Oh, happy to see you too. Well, I'm Michelle Rose Dome. I'm in Dallas, Texas.
I'm Carlos Moore. I'm in New York.
And I'm Monica Lynn. I'm from Miami, Florida.
And we love classic movies.
And we're best friends.
Yeah, we are. And now we're doing the ultimate classic movies vlog just for you.
Each week, we will break down a classic movie and give exclusive behind-the-scenes stories that only 3 people in love with classic films can tell you.
We are
Flick of Time.
Yes.
Yeah. Cheers, my ladies.
Cheers, guys.
To another wonderful conversation about another wonderful movie.
Excited about it.
If you haven't already done so, like and follow us via Instagram and or subscribe on YouTube, Flick of Time. Now let's get into this week's topic. World according to
Garp.
Yes. And just as a heads up to those watching out there, this is rated R, so our content today that we will be discussing is rated R as well. We refrain from cursing, however, our content does include such adult themes. And there you go. So, synopsis. This tells the story of a struggling young writer who finds his life and work dominated by his unfaithful wife and his radical feminist mother, whose best-selling manifesto turns her into a cultural icon.
It is a heavy movie.
It's a heavy movie. It's a heavy movie to address with our 10 questions. So first and foremost, is this an adaptation? Yes, it is an adaptation of a John Irving novel by the same name. It was made 2 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He did not write the screenplay.
He helped to adapt it.
No,
and he makes a cameo.
He did. No, he did not. Did he?
Yes, he did.
Oh my gosh! I thought he had nothing to do with it.
Oh, he had everything to do with it.
Okay.
We'll get into that trivia. We will. Okay. Clear and captivating plot. Yeah or nay?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll tell you what Ebert, famed critic, said. He said of the Chicago Sun-Times that the film gets 3 out of 4 stars because he was entertained but unmoved. He says that there was a palatable interpretation of the novel, considering it was wonderfully well written, yet cruel, annoying, and smug. And he thought the acting was unconventional and absorbing, especially by Williams, by Glenn Close as his mother, and John Lithgow as the transsexual. I thought the visualization of the events by director George Wright Hill, who, by the way, is the pilot. He's the pilot.
Oh, no way.
That's the director. Was fresh and consistently interesting. But when the movie was over, my immediate response was not at all what it should have been. All I could ask to find myself was, what the heck was that about?
Oh my gosh. I think that's the whole point.
That's his review.
Oh my goodness.
So you think that's the whole point?
I think the whole point is the gray. So
that's life.
Right.
The life you should live.
Oh man, I have so much to talk about.
I can't wait to get into. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Wrapping up those questions. So details, were they needless? Was it dynamic and smooth in terms of rhythm?
There was I don't know about completely smooth. I think that, for example, the character, Pooh's sister.
Oh.
Cushy. Yeah, the chocolate friend. Let's play doctor.
The really good friend.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I kind of get the purpose of her character in the film, but I honestly think we could have done without her.
Really?
I thought I don't know. I think we could have done without her. But that's just me.
I 100% disagree.
Really?
For the first time, yes.
Bring it on.
Because I felt like Pooh in the beginning foreshadowed everything, just what happens to him, yes. Right? So, and it happens again and again and again, how she, as a snitch, and as the murderer of Garp. Spoiler!
Spoiler!
But
by the way, the film is left interpretation.
Right. P.S. The function
And so
of
she
this
shoots it.
whole
That's
review.
Not much we know.
Right. The function of
But
this whole
right,
review
right.
is to
Open
analyze
interpretation.
spoilers, right? So
What's that?
that the purpose of our whole review right now
Yes,
is to
folks.
discuss the
We
spoilers.
get into it.
So this whole show is about spoilers, right?
These are classic. They've been out for well over 25 years, so at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they just celebrated the novel's 40th anniversary
Yes.
2 years ago, so...
I think we're safe.
Okay. So I think that the thing about this through
Are
line
you talking about Pooh?
about poo and just
Okay.
whether it's concise, whether it's which is your question, right?
Correct.
I think it's super concise and there was no needless details because over and over again there's symbology that reoccurs that scenes that happen in the past that come back in the future
Yes.
as
the full
he's
circle
older.
moments.
So it's like so many full circle moments, and Pooh is a prime example of a full circle moment like that because she is the
But I don't think her sister is.
no.
That's all.
Cushy.
I agree.
Do you think you needed Cushy for sake of Pooh?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what you're saying, Carla, is like it wasn't necessary?
Yeah, I think
for
that.
the storyline?
I mean, listen, nothing against the character. I don't think that it was like, why is she here? That's not how I felt. Felt like I could still see full circle moments happening. For example, like if Pooh caught Garp exploring himself, let's say, you know, she was always lurking. She was always hiding. She was, so
Yeah.
if Garp was in his room or something and she was just kind of walking by or just kind of hanging out outside his window, she was that girl. So whether Cushy was around or not, who would have still been that character that was sort of lurking around and kind of aha-ing him in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Cushy was necessary because she introduced the voluntary her will to have sex. Right? She wanted to have sex. She was sexually free. And I feel like that was the first introduction in such a young age of the interest of sex, to contrast his mother, who was anti-lust. Right? So I feel like she was necessary in that way. And they tied the villain being Pooh, who you don't even know is a villain until she is. Right?
Until she is. And she kind of is. I mean, she definitely adds to the counterbalance, the tension, the raising of the stakes, I would say, if you will, of Garp's storyline. Because here's a guy, he's just trying to have a coming of age, cannot get a break because of this Pooh character. A dog is sought after him. He's trying to be intimate with Cushy, with Pooh's sister, and then Pooh is the one that calls on over Garp's other romantic interest. It's like, man, stakes.
So that's true. The one thing that I will say about Pooh and Cushy is that there was a part of the film when they were still little girls, when the dad was trying to take the Christmas photos and refused to smile, and her mother said, "Smile, Pooh, or else you'll never find a husband." So Cushy was that traditional, girly girl, like the perfect girl on paper type of thing, where she was, she did dress a certain way, she did present a certain way, which was considered traditional, which was considered what women should have done to attract a male, and who was out about it.
Right.
So in that sense, I can see, I did like her presence. But besides that, I was just like, I still felt like it could have been done with any random girl at school in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Fair. Okay, so it asks about the rating. This was rated R, so who's our audience?
Adults.
Adults. There's no way getting around that. That's entirely adults. It asks if similar films exist, and they in fact do. There are two other John Irving films that have been adapted into film. One is Simon Birch, which is based on A Prayer for Owen Meany. And then we also have The Hotel New Hampshire, which I highly recommend.
He
Jodie
wrote it
Foster is
before,
in it.
right?
These came later.
Oh, after. Okay.
Yes. Both in John Irving's work and also as film adaptations.
Right.
They came after.
I thought he wrote Cider House Rules. Am I wrong?
He did. He actually won an Oscar for that screenplay. He wrote that. Yes. And also Shakespeare in Love and Barton Fink.
Really? Shakespeare in Love.
A writer, coming of age.
Holy Paltrow.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting how he makes his main character a writer as well.
Well, he himself.
Right,
It's
exactly.
based off of him.
Right. And so he says
I'm
it
gonna
in...
get into it with the trivia.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Woo! All right, I picked my top 10. Guys, there are over 30 pieces of trivia on the IMDb page alone for World According to Garp. So we highly recommend you getting into it. Here are our top 10. First, author John Irving's mother was not married at the time that he was conceived. True story. He never met his father, nor his mother would talk about said father. So eventually, John Irving said, look, you got to tell me who it is, otherwise I'm going to write a story about him. She's going to write a story about him. And the mother said, go ahead, dear. And that, as we know, is how the World According to Garp came to be.
Well, in the film, when Jenny snuck into Garp's room to read what he's been writing, she was like, don't write about me. It's wait till I'm dead.
That pissed me off.
I saw that piece of trivia and I thought, oh, that's the connection right there.
Yup.
That's
Let's talk about Glenn Close, your girl, Monica. Let's talk about Glenn Close. This is her film debut.
Really?
First ever. One of many Oscar nominations. Always a Glenn Close, always a bridesmaid. As is the running joke, she has yet to win, even to date, of an Oscar. But she's got an Emmy, she's got a Golden Globe. I mean, she's close, all right?
I don't know why. She's so good.
It was actually a role, though, that was offered to Pat Benatar.
Oh.
Yeah, who turned it down because of her musical career.
The singer?
Mm-hmm.
The singer! Can you imagine that singer? As Jenny Fields?
I can't imagine anyone but
Glenn Close. Iconic.
I feel like I've never seen Pat Benatar act. So maybe
Love is a Battlefield. She's done some music videos.
Oh.
Same, yeah.
That's my Pat Benatar. Okay, John Irving recalls how funny and profane Robin Williams was while being waxed for the role of young Garp in his novel My Movie Business, because Williams was a very naturally hairy gentleman. So similar to that of Dustin Hoffman, he had to do the work in order to play a younger version of himself.
He was what, 29? 30?
Oh, goodness.
When he played himself as a teenager, he did not look like a teenager.
No.
Wow.
Fully grown.
Yeah.
But hey, not the first time Hollywood, nor the last, they would use an older. Up for Robin Williams' role, interestingly enough, there were some other actors. Are you ready to hear who all was offered the role as well?
Yes.
Christopher Reeves.
Ooh. Aw.
Christopher Reeves. Yep. Robert Wool and Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels.
Yep.
Jeff Daniels.
Wow.
Who was Jeff Daniels?
Jeff Daniels is in Dumber.
Oh.
Oh my gosh. All the Aaron
The
Sorkin
blonde
stuff.
guy. Yeah.
The first film that popped in my head was Dumb and Dumber.
I know, it's so terrible. He's such a phenomenal dramatic actor. I've seen him in To Kill a Mockingbird on stage.
Really?
The Sorkin adaptation, and he's excellent. Amazing dramatic actor. Yes.
I did not know that. Cool.
Amazing. And he gets Dumb and Dumber a lot. He's a good sport about it.
It's an iconic movie, to be fair.
Sure.
He did a great job in that, too.
We talked about age. Let's get a little more into it. So Glenn Close plays Robin Williams' mother, yet she's actually only 4 years older than him in IRL.
Wow.
Yeah. And similarly, Glenn Close and the actress that plays the wife, Beth Hurt, she is... they're from successive generations, yet in real life, they're only 1 year apart in age.
Wow.
Yeah, some good makeup.
Yeah.
I thought they did great makeup with Jenny at the end, with Glenn Close at the end, playing the grandma, just very subtle.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Little
thought so
nods in the
too.
hair.
Very subtle, because she still looked really good for her age. But
Dude.
yeah.
Glenn Close. That's it.
Glenn Close. Monica's just saying.
That's the set.
She's sliding into your DMs.
Oh, don't do that to me. Oh, my heart.
I can't.
Just send her a picture like, hey girl.
I love it.
Hey, girl. The film's cast includes 4 Oscar winners. Robin Williams, who later won for not this film, but I don't know. Good Will Hunting.
Oh, of course he did.
Yep.
That's a great
Jessica
movie.
Tandy, who plays the grandma in the very opening scene when they meet Baby Garp.
Oh, yeah.
Jessica Tandy, who won for
Oh, that I don't know.
Driving Miss Daisy.
Aw. We should add that one to the list.
Yeah. Oh yes, absolutely. John Irving, he does that cameo of the ref, the wrestling ref. He's also our author of the novel. He actually wrote the screenplay aforementioned for Cider House Rules. He won that.
Yeah. He turned down writing the
George...
screenplay for this.
Correct, but
right.
he still like had a hand.
Right.
What's an author, you know?
I hear. Yeah.
So our director, George Roy Hill, he actually won for The Sting.
I don't know it.
The Sting.
Mm-hmm. And then our 3 Oscar nominees, which we had John Lithgow, Glenn Close, and Hume Cronin, who played the papa to Miss Jenny Fields, who met Baby Garp. And funny enough, on the subject of Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin, they both appear as a courtesy to the McDowell colony. Are you guys familiar with this concept?
No.
The colony of musicians, of philanthropists that all live together. So the McDowell colony is just in that very vein. This one existed in Peterborough, New Hampshire, and it was an artist colony. They all lived together. It was founded in 1907, and the composer Edward McDowell and his wife, a pianist and philanthropist, Marion McDowell, they ran the joint. And musicians would come and go, and they would live to inspire one another. They would live on site as long as they'd like. They would write what they write.
So cool.
Oh, that's nice.
Where was that? That's so cool.
This particular one was in Peterborough, New Hampshire.
Oh, isn't this story based in New Hampshire?
Well, this story is shot all over Long Island in New York.
I was just gonna say, I was like, definitely Long Island.
Did you recognize that, Carla?
Huh?
Did you recognize Long Island?
What it was just first of all when I want to use the characters' names.
Yeah, pull up the IMDb.
John Lithgow's character,
Roberta.
Muldoon. When Roberta drove to the house and she's like, "Oh, I have to go into the city," so she just hopped in her car to drive to the city. I said, "Oh, they're on Long Island."
Yeah.
Boom.
That's it. But I know there are parts of like Connecticut and Jersey that that are close enough also, but I just assumed they were on.
I just remember them mentioning New Hampshire at one point. My brain went.
They definitely mentioned Boston when they were flying Garpin.
Yeah.
So Massachusetts for sure too. Filming time. So this was shot from April of 1981 to August. And then the theatrical debut was July 1982, 11 months later.
Okay.
Just to get perspective. So let's talk about those cameos. Juicy. We already talked about John Irving. We talked about George Roy Hill, our director. Swoosie Kurtz as the prostitute.
Yes!
Oh, I don't know her. Who is she?
Broadway actress and the award winner. Like, amazing.
She's very funny to me. Just in hilarious. I've only seen her in comedic roles.
Yep.
So, yeah.
She has a great face.
That older redheaded broad.
Very expressive because she doesn't have a lot of lines, but still she says a lot through her gestures, I think. Yeah.
Wasn't she in a lot of like 80s sitcoms?
Oh yeah.
That's okay.
Big soap star.
I'm thinking about 80s sitcoms and because I'm like, she looks so familiar and I know I've seen her in something.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I can pull up right now. Let's see. On IMDb alone. Let's get into it. Let's scroll a bit. I mean, she's got a full body career. I mean, she's in Cruel Intentions. Suddenly Susan. Yes. She plays Liz Miller Keene. Yeah.
It's been forever since I've seen that show, so I honestly can't.
Magic school bus, apparently. I'm telling you, this woman's body of work.
I love Magic School Bus. That was my jam.
It's a good jam.
When I was little, I loved that show. Oh, what was it, PBS?
Oh, yeah.
Kids. We were nerdy kids. What can I
Totally.
say?
Nerdy kids. Theater nerd.
Theater nerd.
It crosses all lines.
Yeah.
Okay, favorite scenes, quotes. I'm done with my trivia.
Ooh, ooh.
Let's get into it. Were there any
Okay.
lines that stood out?
Yes.
Scenes? Let's get into it.
Okay.
No glove, no love.
No glove. Oh, you mean rubbers?
I wrote that down.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see.
Jenny raped Garp's father.
Yeah, I know.
So
Yes.
that's what the principal.
Okay. I want to talk about that.
Story, and I watched it twice, and the first time I watched it, I said it at the same time. I was like, did she just say she raped this guy?
Yeah.
And then the principal said, you raped that man. And I was like,
Yeah.
I raped him.
The woman who started a feminist movement raped someone.
Yeah, so
Did she? Because he was out of
Yes.
his mind and he was already having the constant erections.
Consent.
That line.
Consent.
Consent.
Because the thing
because consent.
he did say good. Remember the word good? He
Yeah.
only said two words, Garp and good. And he did say
Garp,
good.
Great, Garp,
Arp.
Good. And I have a point with Arp. That's why I pointed that out.
So
I do have a point.
even though he consents after she's already having sex with him,
He may have thanked her.
maybe it doesn't matter. She still
Consent.
didn't know if he himself was transsexual. She didn't know if he liked women. She didn't know if he was okay with her jumping on top of him. He did, and he was, thank goodness. But that's where I think this movie plays a lot with gray areas, because we are meant to be like, whoa, she totally raped him, and then later she describes it in another scene thereafter, and you're like, oh, thank God, right? But then you question, was it not? Of course it was, but it's gray because he was okay with it. So it's like,
But it's also kind of playing with dominance, right? I think the idea of, and I could be wrong, I'm not a psychiatrist, but the idea of rape is to assert your dominance. And so I don't know if that's what it was for her at that point. At that point, it just seemed like all she really wanted to do was make sure that she saw an opportunity. She saw an opportunity to get pregnant, and this man was dying anyway, so it's not like she was going to ruin the rest of his life by doing what he did. But then again, if you're a person who's running a home for women who have been raped, who are victims of sexual abuse, who are victims of other things, that's where now dominance, consent, and all these things also come into question, which is another full circle moment, I believe, in the film, right? It's a constant theme. So, and even just how Garp was received when he first went to the house by a lot of these women, these were women who were traumatized, right? The only person who was pretty warm from jump besides Jenny was Roberta.
that I love.
But
I
again,
love her.
Roberta was once a man. She was a woman who transitioned. So we're talking about size. We're talking about physical dominance, which plays out again later when this abusive boyfriend shows up to come pick up his girlfriend.
Right.
And Roberta just, I did love that.
Well, that gentleman was coming for Jenny. 100%. That gentleman was coming for Jenny, the abusive boyfriend. And so as to prevent it, Pyle drives into him. Roberta Pyle drives into him to prevent that.
But
And
isn't
then
it?
the girlfriend's attention is caught. She comes out.
But
and
that's also
intervenes.
now her being a dominant woman.
Mm-hmm.
As Monica mentioned, gray area. It's very interesting.
Another great area about that same moment is the fact that that man was coming for Jenny, found his woman or ex-woman, and
I think he was coming for his girlfriend all along.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
he
Well,
Jenny.
she's like, oh, you found me. Oh, my love. That in itself is gray. She came to hide out in this house for women who needed help, and she's still left with this man. So it's like,
Which, I mean,
Sign of the times.
It was like, oh my God, let's go home.
Sign of the times, I believe.
But in that in itself to the audience is another gray moment, because he comes in as a villain, we hate him, and yet she feels saved by him. And we're like, no, but he's bad.
Right.
But is he? It's gray. This whole movie, it's like...
Big bag of gray.
That's also another element of abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, abuse is not only physical. Abuse is absolutely mental.
Yeah.
Absolutely mental. And so a lot, and this is something that we hear all the time. People who leave these abusive relationships only to come back time and time and time again. So this is just another example of that, right? And this guy looking to assert his dominance to a woman that he doesn't even know, he's only heard of, and then Roberta asserting her physical dominance on this. It was a lot.
Moment. It was a moment.
It was a great moment.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for Roberta's football background.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that moment was so funny when she describes her football background to Garp, and he's like, oh,
Yes. Where would I know you from?
well, I was a linebacker for... I was a linebacker.
Tight end, the Chicago Bears. I'm cool. You know what? I really appreciate Roberta's character. First of all,
My favorite.
Glamorous.
My favorite.
Yes.
John Lithgow.
Oh, I mean,
Yep.
I was so impressed.
I loved Roberta's character. I think that she was my favorite character. Yeah, she was
Me
my favorite
too.
character in this whole
Me
film.
too.
Besides the fact that I love a caftan, and Roberta rocked a caftan like nobody's business.
Yeah, she did.
I also,
about.
I really loved how tender her character was, and she was just very tender towards Garp and Jenny and the boys and Helen.
One of his first reviews, she's like, I read your book and I loved it. It was one of the first reviews he had received up until that point.
Yes, and there was just something warm, and it was almost like we all knew that she was a trans woman. However, it wasn't really something. I mean, there were parts where they touched on it, but it was obvious, and even if it was never mentioned, it was even though it was never even if it was never mentioned, it was something that we could just accept with that character throughout the whole movie, and that was really, really exciting. She was my favorite character. I loved her so much.
I agree. Their friendship was
agree.
so beautiful. One of my favorites is chasing down that ruffian of a truck driver together, and then subsequently having to duck and cover from said truck driver.
Yeah, that was a good scene. Something that I thought was cool is that Roberta is John Irving's favorite character. He said it in an interview. I
saw a bit of it.
He said that...
We'll leave it in the comments.
Yes, we will. Cool. He said that the only thing that he didn't... Well, two things that he didn't like about this movie, because he didn't write the screenplay. He said he wished Roberta was a more prominent character, like she was in his book, who is a recurring character in a lot of his works. He created the character of Roberta in a lot of other of his books with other names. And then he said that he wouldn't have cast Robin Williams in this role because Robin Williams was too much of a nice guy. He wanted him to be a little bit more villainous.
Oh,
really interesting, right? Yep.
Here's the thing.
Like an did he give any examples? Because I haven't seen the full interview yet.
No.
As to the other actors.
No, I don't remember.
Like, okay, so we already ran over in the trivia. So Christopher Reeve, Jeff Daniels. Jeff Daniels would have held down the fort of being like cantankerous.
Yeah.
His dramatic acting very cantankerous.
The thing is, I wonder, because a lot of guys who were raised, who had a helicopter parent that was a mother, or just a lot of people, for example, who were, especially boys, I would think, and I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm no psychologist, but I would think that a lot of, especially boys who were raised by a helicopter mother, wouldn't be a rough and tough guy, right? There would be an element
more
of
tender per se,
a little bit softer, a little bit less of a macho guy because you're being raised by mom. And on top, Jenny was, she was the parent that hovered. Like, every time Garp looked at a girl, there's Jenny, like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that wrestling match. Oh,
But I think
Helen. No, and even with Cushy, when Garp got bitten by the dog, and she brought Garp over to the house, and Cushy was by her father, and she and Garp were smiling at each other, and his mother was like, absolutely not.
Right.
She like, oh, it's that lust, the word, the recurring word of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It was like she was afraid of it.
So Jenny was a major helicopter parent. I think she was really messed up in a lot of ways. Carla, you mentioned about her not saying something along the lines of, you're not allowed to write about me until I'm dead, and yet she writes about him anyway. And then he's the writer, and so she's like, well, I'm going to write a novel, and becomes famous for it. While he's trying to do the same thing. So there's a lot of reasons for him to be resentful of his mother, and yet he's so sweet to her.
It's a strange dynamic, and in a way, I still haven't, I don't know, I haven't made up my mind. It kind of makes me wonder if Jenny was just, in a weird way, like, it has to always be about me, right? In a sense, like, it was, even when he started developing feelings for Helen, that was when it was like, let's go to New York City. If you want to be a writer, you have to experience things. Let's go to New York City. And hiring a prostitute
for his son. First. Yeah.
To make sure that your son's needs were taken care of, that's physical. That's the lust. That is not emotional, right? Helen was emotional. And remember when she was talking to him, she was like, so these feelings that you feel for this lady, is it the same as Helen? Because she knew, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that weird, like, I need to be the primary woman in your life?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
There are mothers like that out there.
I wasn't sure, because she was like, all I wanted was a kid, but I didn't want the man attached to it. I didn't want the, everything else attached to
kids grow up.
I didn't have to pay, I didn't want to pay the price of splitting my life with a man to have this child, so this was a great setup, right? But I could really only be the only woman in Garp's life until, eventually Garp did his own thing. And she seemed to warm up to all of that, but
I hated Jenny in the beginning. I did not like her character. I was angry with her, and that happened to me a lot with several characters. There were moments where I hated Garp. I remember I had emotional reactions to this film. I cried, I laughed out loud, I punched my bed, I got really angry, and that, I think, is a good movie for me. When I am into it so much that I have these out loud reactions. And again, I'm gonna go back to the gray of the movie being a theme, how the writer, in a through line of his lifetime, which is really challenging to do, because a successful screenplay is usually 24 hours long. But they did the whole, Garp's whole lifetime, from birth to death, right?
Right.
I think they did it really successfully.
From birth to death,
Yeah. And I hated him, I loved him, I agreed with him, I appreciated him, and then I despised him. And that happened to me with a lot of different characters. And that change of emotions I had for every single character is just another example of how successfully he navigates the gray area. Do you love him? Do you hate him? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And that's another example of how the writer did it successfully.
What are your thoughts on Helen? How did you feel about Helen?
Helen is his wife.
Is the wife who justifies her own extramarital affair, care of the babysitting incident, if you will recall.
Yes. I hated her, and then I felt bad for her, and then I fought for her. The same as Garp. Garp Garp
This
cheated
rain of
on Helen.
emotions,
Yeah.
roller coaster.
Garp cheated on her. Remember? And that's a gray area because they don't specify. He pulls up with a babysitter. He pulls up to
Veers off.
he veers off and then turns off the car, and you don't see anything else. But then you definitely see her cheating on him. So I think that that's supposed to be gray too.
I think that she was gonna, regardless. I think she just used the babysitter to justify what she did.
She hadn't done it yet. He did it first.
She hadn't done. Listen, we know when we're toying with an idea. You know.
Maybe, but you can't.
I want to, but I shouldn't. He's young. He's handsome. He's kind of like this.
She's always by the book. She was always that studious individual who nose to the grindstone. Her father was a point of authority, so she'd always followed the rules up until that point.
But she asked him before she cheated on him. She asked him, "Are you sleeping with a babysitter?" And he's like, "No." Turns around and kind of.
How could you even ask? And he turns around.
Right. He deflects. That's messed up.
Yeah.
That's messed up, and never admits to it. She never finds out. That's messed up.
I feel like I could be wrong. I feel like
a small town. I'm sure. I don't know. It isn't shown. It isn't shown, but it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Jenny, I'm sorry. Helen said that too. She said that to her student. It's a small town, Michael. But I feel like yes, he did definitely have his little fling. However, I feel like he felt very guilty about it.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a lot of remorse in that, which was why he was like, let's look at our kids, let's look at our family. Like, it's also the fact that this is another point. He never had that normal family life, right? He didn't have his father, and his mother was a woman that he finds out as a child raped his dad just so she could have him.
That's messed up. That's hard to live with.
Right. So now he's in a relationship. He's married to a woman that he loves, and they have children that they wanted to have. Right? He loved being a father. He loved being a husband. He liked the family life. As a matter of fact, let's talk about gender roles. You know,
yes.
Helen goes out to work.
And he stays home.
To work every day. Garp is the one who's home. He's taking care of the
kids.
He's in the house. This is something that people, I don't remember people speaking about until the last few years.
Right.
You know, so this was super
very progressive.
This movie is so progressive. For the 80s, for 82.
Even now. I mean, now it's a little more common for, I guess, roles to be reversed, or roles that we know to be traditional to be reversed, sure. But this film takes place in what, the 60s, 70s? On that cusp. This was unheard of. A man is staying home, maintaining the household, watching the children. Although he did have his money from his book sales, and his money that he's obviously going to get is from his mom. But essentially, his wife is the breadwinner. His wife going home and bringing home the bacon for him to cook. That is a total role reversal. And Jenny, I always do this. Helen is technically the dominant one, right? Because she is the man of the house. She is the one wearing the pants. She is the one going out and cheating on the one who's at home. What does that sound like?
I don't know. I can't. I can.
Roles have completely reversed from what we know to be.
Yes.
It's usually the guy who cheats out and then the guy who cheats on the wife.
Yeah.
From what we, right? So.
But they're skirting the line of ethics. Both of them.
Yes. Yes. More gray.
More gray. Got my shirt today because.
Open it up. Look at her shirt. It's gray. Let's get into it, wardrobe aficionado. Carla, bring it home.
Costumes.
With the costumes were very, very simple. The only person who was really dressed up, who really was planned out, was Roberta. The best. Was Roberta. These women in this film were women who were dealing with something, B, who were fighting for something. In Helen's case, she was too busy to be, super glam, right? She was out every day, earning the money.
Yes.
Right? primping and all that stuff just was a lot. And it didn't really seem to be her style anyway. When she was a student, she was being a student. She was in sweats.
They even talk about it.
Pardon?
They even talk about her being in sweats. And
Yeah.
he's like, do you lie? I like to see you in a dress. Why do you wear sweats? And she's like, oh, I just prefer it or whatever. And they
but like Cushy
Learn what she wants.
Cushy was also that girl, right? But Cushy wasn't like a Pooh who was fighting for something. Like there's no, I don't have to, and also the idea wasn't to impress a man. Cushy wants to impress a man. Cushy wants
to get
that
a husband.
Exactly. Because she wanted the male attention. These other women it was like the last thing that they wanted was male attention because they got it, and they got it in a way that they so didn't.
Unwarranted. Mm-hmm.
Completely unwarranted. So
yes.
let me kind of hide, and let me it was to blend in. It was to not stand out and be noticed, which is something that people say a lot of abuse victims do. Like they'll wear the baggy clothes, they'll kind of hide behind their clothes. And so
Sure.
it's the same. As far as Jenny went, Jenny almost always wore her nurse's outfit, her nurse's uniform, because she has things to do. She doesn't have time to primp and to get dressed. She has these abuse victims to take care of. She has this political
movement now.
Here that she was just starting to, that she was just beginning, and so she didn't have time, and she was still a nurse, and she still saw herself as a nurse.
I think that it's also like a uniform for her, just like it would be a soldier's. Soldiers wear their soldier outfit in the mall. Like you don't have to wear that.
Nightingale. Yeah.
Her
Right.
armor.
It's her armor. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think with Roberta, I think the reason that she was so dressed up was because this was her time to shine. It was reversed for her. So before she transitioned, when she was a man and she was a football player for the Chicago Bears, she was hiding.
Mm-hmm.
But post-transition, now she can be her full female self.
Yeah.
Now she can really explore all this. These women, the other women, they were born into this because they were just born women. And so it's like, you have to dress up. You have to. They probably experienced that growing up, just like Boo. Smile, you'll never have a husband. Be more like your sister, you'll never find a husband. And so these women, their roles were completely reversed, actually. So, yes, there wasn't a lot of focus on what they were wearing, probably because they wanted to hide, if only for their own protection, a lot of them. Yeah.
I want to talk about the beginning of the movie starts with a baby in and out of the frame against the sky, and you see the baby's penis.
Mm-hmm.
You do
flip-flopping around in the air, and I think that would never happen today.
It would be edited.
They would not show a baby's penis in the
They
movies.
would probably stop at the baby's, like at the navel, and maybe
the navel.
They'll never. Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be sexualized. It was literally like a baby's being tossed. He happens to be nude.
But today, because of sexual predators, that would never happen.
Oh, wow.
That would never happen.
I agree with that. I don't think so.
No.
I did have a few notes also. When Jenny was talking about Garp's father, and she said that before he died, he did say art. At the end of the movie, when Pooh shot, before Pooh,
even when she spots him in the funeral.
Yes, when she spots him in the funeral home, she says art.
Now, do you think that would be because she was excuse me, I want to get this right.
An Ellen Jamesian.
Jamesian.
Ellen Jamesian.
And she had cut off her tongue? Or do you think that was a nod at something else?
I think she was Jamesian, but I also think it was foreshadowing. I think it was foreshadowing. Just like you said, Pooh was a consistent character who kind of...
Pooh was foreshadowing. That was her job.
Yeah, at the beginning, Jenny went
to the narrative. That was her job.
He said when he was dying, or right before he died, he said art instead of Garp. And then Pooh said art. She didn't say Garp. she said Arp, when she saw him at the memorial
At the
service,
funeral.
died scene.
And
He shot him in the next scene.
death is close. Yeah. That makes sense. I didn't even catch that. Good catch.
Yeah, that was something I noticed.
Yep.
And just a lot of, yeah, I wrote it. Jenny raped Garp's father.
Yeah, I wrote it too.
Again, we're coming back to that. Yep.
I wrote it too.
And I did write, I do think that this whole movie was an exploration of sexuality in many different capacities.
Yes.
I wrote that. I also wondered if Jenny resented men, and maybe there was something in her past that made her feel like, who needs this?
I know women like that, personally.
So, care of Monica sharing the interview, and it's going to be, we'll share a link with John Irving that commemorates the 40th anniversary. He gets into it. Yes, he says that it isn't adapted into the film, but that Jenny did experience, was it sexual misconduct in a movie theater prior to the incident of sleeping with Garp's father. So she is a victim of abuse.
In the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
So there you go. There you go.
I know women like Jenny.
And that's a visceral response, an emotional response to trauma as a result. That's her copingism that has then come forth.
Yeah.
It is. That's a control thing, because if you feel like you're out of control when somebody overpowers whatever way that is, maybe that was a way of trying to reassert herself as somebody who won't let that happen to her again, or other women, right? I don't know if it was overcompensating, but I can't read into that. But
that was her choice. That's how she wanted to live her life.
I know women that have experienced sexual traumas that are not interested in sex at all. They're like, I do not have sex. I don't want a man touching me. I don't like flirting. I don't need lust in my life or sex at all.
Yeah, supposed to be like that. Somebody who said, honestly, and that person was sexually abused at one point, I believe by a spouse, and they said sex is only for just to conceive.
Right.
You don't have sex for fun. You only have it for a kid.
Yeah, this woman I'm talking about has 3 children, but otherwise has a successful marriage, ironically, but does not enjoy sex and is vocal about it.
I heard that.
Her husband and her
many different ways to live a life.
have a very happy, well, seemingly happy marriage. They've been together for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jenny saying to Garp, you really don't need a father. And at the end, the last time that Garp sees her when she's...
As the helicopter is taking off.
You're right. I didn't really need a father.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's fulfilling.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that Jenny had a transatlantic dialect. Did you notice that? Her
dialect. I just didn't know what.
Transatlantic meaning so like in the 30s and 40s they spoke with an Americanized British dialect. She spoke like that, like very they spoke like that. Remember the Nick at Night movies? Samantha from Bewitched. She spoke like that. That was very common.
And I'm gonna take you back.
She was from Connecticut originally, and that could have factored in. I don't believe she had a dialect coach for this.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna take you back to college for a second, Monica. There was a class about a phonetics class, and there was a film. I don't know if you saw the same one, American Tongues, where they did talk about different dialects throughout the country.
I don't remember. I might have skipped that class.
That's okay. But it's a film. I love that film. It's hilarious to me.
Aww.
It was 1970.
What film is this?
Pardon?
What film is this?
It's called American Tongues. It's on YouTube.
Oh.
Filmed in late 70s, early 80s. But there is a dialect in Massachusetts.
1988 documentary.
That slight British twang.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that it is a dying dialect.
Oh yeah.
So that could possibly be because we are talking about the Northeast, and it's not 100% specific, but maybe Jenny's character is from that general area, because they didn't mention Boston. So, and it looked like they were they weren't in Boston when Jenny had first when Jenny first had baby Garp. So maybe they were out in Massachusetts somewhere, just maybe not in Boston. But there are parts of Massachusetts, from what I understand, and certain parts of the Northeast, probably parts of New England, there it is, where they do have that slight British accent, but it is a dying dialect.
Mm-hmm. Is it dead at this point?
It might be.
In 2020?
It might be.
It'll live on forever in cinema.
Outside of cinema, there's actually a stand-up special with our girl from Broad City, Alana Glazer, and she gets into that very accent. She's like, they all went to the same film school.
Yeah.
All these 40s to 60s actresses. She gets into it. I recommend.
Cool.
Nice.
Oh my gosh. Garp has, for not having much experience, he has so much game in wooing Helen. Am I right?
Right.
Like that monologue when they're
From
walking.
the very beginning, just going up and down the risers.
Funny.
Yes.
I don't know.
And then he walks off like, oh, I'm such an a-hole.
And she's like, I only want to marry a writer. And then later in the conversation, he's like,
she knows what she wants.
yeah.
She knew what she wanted.
And later in the
Helen knew what she
conversation, Robin is like, well, I'm a writer. I wonder if he became a writer in wanting to woo Helen.
Say that again?
I wonder if he became a writer after that conversation wanting to woo Helen.
Maybe it didn't hurt. I'm going to say.
Was he interested in writing before this conversation with Helen? I don't think so. I wonder, was he even interested in writing? Was it even mentioned in the film before that conversation with Helen? Because all of a sudden he's writing short stories after.
In the book?
We have to read the book is what? To really know.
I mean, the novel suggests that he was.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is why I was like, why are you parting with this typewriter? Clearly it's something you will need, right? That scene where Jenny's like, let's return the typewriter.
Mm-hmm.
And Garp's like, wait, no, I'm not ready.
No, but even at the end, toward the end of the film, when, or not toward the end, when it was like Christmas time or something, it was after Helen and Garp.
That big wide tree. Oof.
Yeah, the tree, and then Helen was like, wait a minute, hush, and they heard him typing again, and they celebrated a little bit. It was like, yay, a little
sweet.
That was really sweet.
Endearing moment.
Ooh, I have a retro rewind, where we analyze the technology of the time and compare it to today. Remember the awesome scene when his papers fly everywhere, and they're anxious, like running around collecting them all. Well,
yes, his stories.
That would never happen today because he would have had a saved file on his computer.
True. Just the one copy.
Right?
What are you doing?
Back
up your work.
Just the typewriting. Typewriters today are just decorative. People put plants in them, for Christ. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. I used to play with typewriters on my dad's desk when I was a kid. Like if I had to have school one day, my dad would take me to work and I would just play with I would just.
Yes, I had an old typewriter too. I'd like mess around with it, but nothing of substance.
Something that was also very progressive of Jenny. She was an advocate and a supporter of sex work.
Right? The prostitute scene.
And she's like, can I ask you questions? Okay, great. Garp, would you like her? Certainly. And it was just like, and then she said, and Garp was like, no, don't,
don't do that here. Don't do payment here.
And then she did say at some point, it is her body.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes!
Clear act of sex work also. And then she started working on cars on the compound.
Yeah. Started expanding her own mind and consciousness. Good on her.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was
her character gets to evolve a little.
I wonder how much.
Yeah, because she rescues Garp at the end too at the funeral with Roberta, the two of them. They fend off all of them.
Yes. Yeah. It was Roberta, Helen, and what's her name? The prostitute.
Oh, they just refer to her as the prostitute on the IMDb cast list. So
the Catholic prostitute.
The
trash, and I loved that. I loved that.
I said it.
A note that I kind of put for myself is that in this film, a lot of the times it felt like sex was more transactional and a lot emotional. And I think that emotion, except for Garp and Helen, it just felt, even the way people talked about it, right? Just Jenny talking to the sex worker, Jenny talking about her experience with Garp's biological father. It was like sex is just a transactional thing.
Right.
That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And even when she mentioned Helen to Garp in front of the prostitute, she's like, "Is it the same? Whatever you feel for Helen, is it the same thing?" It was like she just kind of rounded it all up to lust. I don't know. It was just something that I kind of noticed when I
It's a good point.
watched it.
Back to that role reversal you mentioned. I love, and then we were talking about lines that we liked. I love when Garp says, "I gotta cook, gotta clean, gotta cry."
I gotta cry.
And that I think is really cool how they accent feminine qualities in Garp. Or
Also,
vulnerable qualities in Garp that could be considered feminine, I guess, to the...
But even Roberta talking about her want for children and just like she started crying and she's like, "Oh God, this estrogen," and maybe spoiling it, kind of tallying it up to that, but maybe that it was beyond that. Yeah, sure, the estrogen may have played a role, but it was like, gosh, before I transitioned, had I known how much I wanted children, I would have had them, And another thing, I feel like if Roberta ever found her person, everything would be, her relationship would not be transactional. She's really one of the women in the film that's just very different from the others, right?
She is, even though she is the most extreme character in terms of, her being transsexual, I think she's the most emotionally put together. One who is the one who's most sane. I don't know how to describe her.
No, that's great. That's great.
You know what? She probably would have been the one who was the most unwound if she was a character that was introduced in this film before the transition. It was the transition that actually brought her to her true self.
Good point.
So then why forget? Like, everything matches now, right?
Yeah.
Why forget? I am calm. Maybe when I was a wide receiver or whatever for the Chicago Bears.
Right, I kept it in.
Yeah. So
now I'm letting it all out.
It was anxiety, rage, frustration, hurt.
She sweat that out. She sweated out. She's home. She is herself now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Ooh, a really good parallel. Okay, again with the word cinematographically. Really cool parallel. How in the beginning of the film, one of the first scenes that we already talked about was her, Jenny, with Garp in her hand, yelling how she came to conceive Garp, right? And then like yelling over the wind blowing to her parents. Well,
I put the subtitles on for that.
Yeah, me too. I always have subtitles because I thought it was really interesting, the parallel between that scene and then a scene that happens in the future of the movie later on when Garp is yelling at his kid in the beach over the wind and he can't hear him. That's a parallel.
But Jenny did say that.
I didn't even catch that. I thought you were going to say when he was yelling to his mother as she was catching the helicopter. Right.
Oh, no.
Couldn't hear him.
Yeah, no, he's yelling at his kid about the undertow. And
about the undertow. The undertowed.
But Jenny, that was cute. Jenny used to say that to Garp too. Remember?
Yes.
Grandparents died, and then Jenny inherited the house, and Garp would run out to the waves, and Jenny would say, "Garp, be careful for the undertow. Watch out for the undertow." And then when Garp said it to
Walt, yeah, the younger one.
Walt, Jenny noticed it, and they had a moment.
Yeah.
Because it was something that Jenny said. Walt is a mini Garp.
Yeah.
Yes.
Walt is baby Garp. Also, the scene where Roberta, Garp, and the boys are playing like sword fighting
I love that scene.
in the front yard. I feel like that was such a Robin Williams scene right there.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not Garp, that's Robin Williams. I'm sorry.
Totally.
Like, that's Robin. I almost, and I could be very wrong, I almost feel like that must have been his favorite scene to
Hey, what did you think? I want to ask you, what did you think about the costumes in that very same scene?
in that scene.
Uh-huh.
What, in being
Yeah.
scum of the earth, soldiers, warriors?
I thought of you because I thought it was really interesting what the kids were wearing. What Robin Williams was wearing was like armor made out of household
Like a
objects.
house welcome mat. And
I thought it was so cool.
Kitchen.
Yes.
They were
It was innovative.
So cool.
It felt believable.
It felt
That's what I think.
believable. Yeah.
Of course, they were playing pretend. I mean, that's what you do.
And like they
You
cut up the welcome mat.
It was
To
not
have-
a store-bought thing.
So cool.
No
It
Party
was-
City there.
Time. Playtime does not need to be overthought. Yeah, overthunk.
Ooh, another quote. I have a quote that's really great, I think. Sometimes you can have a lifetime in a day and not realize this is as beautiful as it gets.
Yeah.
That was Garp.
There were quotes in this film,
Yeah,
by the way.
a lot.
Really,
I have goosebumps.
really, really good quotes.
Ooh, another retro rewind. Okay. And this isn't exactly, I mean, people still do post office stamp on a letter today, but it's not as common, which is why me too, which is why I added it as a retro rewind, because hate mail is the OG of digital trolls today.
Yes.
Nobody, not
They
maybe,
were analog trolls.
they're what?
Analog trolls.
Analog troll.
Analog trolls. That's perfect. So I'm not saying that people don't send hate mail today. I'm just saying it's not as common because there's internet trolls. For people who want to tell you how much they hate you, they just, go to your Facebook or Instagram.
Right, it's so quick.
Right.
Whereas a letter was something that required focus and dedication.
Right.
Follow through.
Trolls might have been worse because it was less instant. Like you had to sit down and write
And then you had to look faster.
envelopes and what a mess.
I think a huge symbol in this film is the home of the women, of the broken women, because everybody, it's a huge symbol because a big theme in this film is that everybody is broken and everything is gray. Who is right or wrong? Everybody is right and wrong.
Right.
Yeah. But also, I think it's what I got from that actually was that nobody needs a man. You're walking into this house where the women are fixing things, the women are fixing the cars, they're painting the house, they're preparing the home, they're making it homey, which is something that women are just known to do. But on top of that, they are maintaining the house as a man would in a male capacity, and as women would in a female capacity. The Christmas tree was glorious, but that house was solid. The cars were fine. And
just fine.
really was there besides the abusive ex-boyfriend of that one character was Garp. And he didn't really do that stuff. He just showed up.
Yeah.
So my favorite line, the thing is to have a life before we die, it can be a real adventure. Yes. I thought that was a great line. I it's one of those things that tattoo it on yourself somewhere.
Can we talk about the car accident?
Sure.
The trope of dying with a penis in your mouth has been used before in Hollywood. One series that I recently saw it in was American Gods. Have you guys ever seen it?
Oh, sure.
Book. heard of it, but
it's really great. And one of the characters dies like that with a penis, with the penis in her mouth. Yeah, and I think it's, oh my God, that moment was so, because the kid loses an eye because the mom was cheating with a, and it was like, okay, just this one last time, but that one last time cost both of them everything.
Yes.
Cost him his penis.
There was also we're talking about potentially losing a penis at the very beginning, right?
Right.
The little boy who got his
caught in the zipper.
The zipper. I mean, there was another mention of it in the film where they were like, "There's nothing there," and then Roberta also alluded to it as a joke. She was like, "Well, I took mine off, mine was like this one."
That's how we learn, actually, that said student Michael befell that tragic way is via Roberta communicating.
I thought it was interesting how they normalize Roberta's character and being trans when Roberta kisses Garp in the mouth at one point, just as a hello.
That's their friendship.
She kisses Helen in the mouth also, and Jenny.
But Garp is a straight man. And in the 80s, that's like,
Well, at that point, I don't know if we got into the 80s at that point. I think we were still in the 70s, but still.
But it was released in 82. I'm talking about, like, audience reaction.
Yes, but the film and the timeline in terms of when they meet.
Yeah, I just think it was super brave.
Because, let's see, Jenny was a nurse in the war, so I take it the war was World War II.
I think it's sort of like 40s and then 60s.
Right. So we're from the span of maybe mid to late 1940s, because Garp was a little boy. So the very, very first scene had to be maybe 1943, would be my guess. About 1943. Because this was still the war. The war ended in 42? In 42, I believe. Around there, 42, 43. Garp was still a little baby. He was an infant. So, yeah, so the timeline was probably from early to mid 40s through the 60s. What the timeline seems like. I'm still a Catholic, believe it or not. That was hilarious.
Still Catholic. Over her cup of coffee.
Jenny, to Cushy's father, keep an eye on your... Oh, no. To Helen's father, keep an eye on your daughter. After she discussed, she said that, look, they have eyes for each other. To Helen's dad, who was the wrestling coach, was he the dean or the coach?
The coach. They had just moved.
Because later Garp would usurp that.
They call themselves Team Home, which I thought was really cute.
Home team.
Root for the home team.
That's so cute, actually.
And I have a daughter. But it's funny that she mentioned that, because a lot of the times, especially right now, maybe that's why it stuck out to me, especially right now, we're saying how a lot of women are the ones who, how when a woman is a victim of any kind of assault or any kind of abuse, we fail to hold the men accountable in the same, what was she wearing? Was she drinking? But what about, so that's kind of the
other parties involved.
Right? So if, God forbid, Garp was accused of something, Jenny would have blamed her. I think she said, keep an eye on your daughter. Meanwhile, she sees that her son has eyes for this young girl, or for this woman. So it's like, he plays a role in this also. So if anything were to happen, he has to assume his responsibility as well. It was just something I noticed.
Something I think is really interesting now, going into the future of the film, when we're talking about the Ellen, what was the last name?
The Jamesians?
Jamesians.
Oh, yes.
I thought it was really interesting how him and his mom are both writers at this point, right? I feel like he has what's the word, a retribution. He kind of does a little bit of the opposite that his mom is doing, even though they're so close. He writes a book against the movement, the Ellen Jamesian movement. And the irony is that Ellen Jamesian feels the same way he does about the women that are doing it for her.
But that was in support of her. Remember the photo on the back?
Right.
It said, please make them stop. So
Yes.
it was in support of Ellen. And so they're like, and so it's like saying, listen, you're showing your support this way, and she does not want you to do that. So I support her by amplifying what she's asking you to not do to yourself. Don't mutilate yourselves on my behalf.
But isn't it interesting how they're fighting for the same thing, but in opposite ways? Yeah.
It's extreme. It's very extreme.
Yeah. I love that he meets her.
That exists in society then, and that exists in society today.
So
are extremists
relevant to today. And actually, John Irving says it in the interview that I spoke of. He says that the whole point of this interview, the theme of the interview itself, is how relevant it is today, and how he didn't realize when he wrote it. He thought he was writing a dystopian future that wouldn't be relevant in 40 years. 40 years later, it's more relevant than ever. And and his interview was, I think it was 2017, so Trump...
18.
Oh, is it? 2018?
Yes.
Oh my God, 2
Yes.
years ago. So he talks about American politics and our country as it is today.
It's in the middle of our current administration.
100%.
How relevant is this film still?
Crazy.
It's wild. These are concepts, like these are things that I always thought that were so hush-hush. Meanwhile, there were films about it. There were characters in books, best-selling books.
Yes.
These were not as, yes, it was considered taboo, but it wasn't, behind closed doors and in dark alleyways. This was stuff that people were actually talking about. And they're still talking about it in the same way. It's just, it feels different maybe because of technology and the access that we, how it's easy to have conversations with a perfect stranger on the internet. But the exact same topics are still completely relevant to this day. The same fights are still being fought.
And so I'd like to push how amazing it is that we're doing this. Because I think that this, through the medium of stories that were told 25 or more years ago, we're sharing ethical principles that are relevant today and important to talk about today. And we're doing it through mediums of film, through our favorite thing ever. And so thank you, ladies, for having these conversations with me and sharing it with the world.
Thank you. And subsequently to our viewers out there, this is just the start of a conversation of many that we hope to encourage a narrative where you feel open to talk about things.
Absolutely.
And please ask us questions, disagree with us. Leave it in your comments below because it's a conversation. We're not right about everything, so we want to hear.
We're here to do classic movies in a vlog,
Yeah.
right?
But
we happen to touch upon themes because said film goes there, so we're going there.
Right.
It's very funny. Speaking of, Roberta, she's my queen. She's my queen. But Roberta
MVP.
is, in a way, I couldn't help but think about people today, trans men and women today, particularly, and how, yes, Roberta did find a safe haven, thank God, and how Roberta was an athlete in her in one portion of her life, so maybe physically she had something that even other trans women didn't have as far as, a particular build and just the discipline of being a football player, right?
Right.
How the way that she was able to protect those other women was probably the same way that she was sort of able to protect herself to some degree because of her physical abilities. And I think a lot of people see a trans woman and maybe they are intimidated by her size, but that's probably all there is to it. You know, we can't make assumptions about their capacity to just randomly physically overpower you, which I have never heard in my life, right? And so there is a fear about that, but seeing how Roberta tackled this one man, I wonder if people see particularly trans women and they get that idea, oh my goodness, this is just going to be this big physical threat and blah, blah, blah. But in fact, they're just trying to exist.
Yeah. Wow.
Trying to exist.
Oh, yeah, that. Ooh, Carla. They're just trying to exist.
It was, maybe that's why she was my favorite character. She found a safe place. So, I'm not going to cry, but she did find a safe place. And so, very relevant to now.
Yes, important.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So leave your comments.
Place for crying, just like Garp. Garp would say.
Oh, man.
Place for crying.
Oh,
Sorry.
man. Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. All welcome.
Published. Can we not?
Oof.
So welcome.
This movie was heavy.
This movie was heavy.
Guys,
And we did it.
do you have any more notes before my question?
No.
Before we close out.
Well, I'd like to say first that my last note is that it ends how it began, which is it happens a lot in this movie. We come full circle, right?
Life cycle moments, yes.
It ends in a shot of the sky, just like we saw the baby in the sky, which brought me to. I was a mess at this point because it's towards the end.
But also for his obsession with his dad, who was a flyer.
Oh, yeah. Hey, we didn't mention this. I wonder how much the shot of the plane crashing into the house cost. That had to be done in one take.
Goodness gracious.
How many houses do they have?
Hollywood can handle a plane crashing multiple times.
Okay. You're right.
1980s.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Let's just refer crashing planes into houses?
Yep.
And
you didn't even get the dot.
39. Like, my goodness.
So, my babies, how do you rate this film? 1 to 10. 1 being lowest, 10 being the best movie you've ever seen. Or one of them. 8?
Yeah.
Michelle?
Yeah.
Why?
There's a lot of gray. And I understand the purpose of the gray. I think that there was I think I've said it enough. There was really one particular character who truly moved me in this film. It was just a lot of gray for me, and I did like characters like Kushi, or just Kushi in particular. I felt like we could have still gotten the point of Pooh, whether Kushi was there or not. You know, and the dog. Well, the dog was necessary.
The dog.
Foreshadowing.
Right. Sure.
I love that he bites the dog back later.
And the mouth sticks up for him.
Yeah.
That was perfect. Like, yeah. Honestly love Jenny's response there. I loved it.
When
Really?
he was a boy
Garp
and again.
bit the dog. Or what's his name?
I probably would have done the exact same. I would have been like, oh, really?
Don't mess with Carla, everyone. Just don't. Or offspring thereof. Don't. Just don't. Okay?
Son is not dog food.
All right, Meech. Michelle, what do you think?
I think in the same vein, for me, I understood the purpose of the gray, but I think there are certain elements that they could have, from the novel, which I definitely encourage everyone to read, by the same name, World According to Garp, to read, because they explore Roberta's relationship a little bit more, and there are other themes. But the movie itself, the themes that it does get into, as we get into as well, so vital, so important, so also an 8.
Yeah.
I give it a 10.
You gave it a 10.
I'll tell you why. Okay.
knew it.
I did.
Our first 10. Woo!
No, I gave Casablanca a 10 as well.
Did you?
I did. I give
We have 2 8s right now.
The World According to Garp an 8 because I loved the theme of the gray area and the questioning of ethics, and I think it makes each character really well-rounded and dynamic because everyone is right and everyone is wrong and everyone is good and everyone is bad, and that in itself is human, and they do a really good job with the through line of a lifetime, which is so difficult to do as a writer, and I think they did a great job. They took me on a journey, and I cried, and I told you I had so many emotional reactions to the film that I forgot that I was supposed to be writing notes. I just put my phone down and stopped writing. I was just so into it. So because it captivated me so much, and because I loved the ambiguity of ethics as a theme in the movie, I give it a 10. I was so involved.
So involved. It was a 10, so we got 2 8s and a 10, and there you have it, the rating of World According to Garp and our review of World According to Garp. It has been fantastic being on this journey with you. As we said before, please continue to explore these topics, these themes that are so relevant still today. Let us talk about our next film we will be covering, The Wiz, which is star-studded with such giants. I mean, you got Diana Ross, Michael Jackson, Lena Horne, Richard Pryor with this beautiful black-led cast. We are so excited to get into that next week. So tune in to our Instagram and our YouTube. Like us, follow us, subscribe, because we are
Flick of Time! I love you, girls. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave us your comments below. We appreciate you.
See you next week.
I'm Michelle. See you next week. I'm Michelle Rosdom, and I'm in Dallas, Texas.
I'm Carla Zamora, and I am in New York.
And I'm Monica Lynn, and I'm in Miami.
And we are Flick
Flick
of
of Time.
Thank you. Good night.
Ciao.
Bye.